So this is a taster session for people who are interested in coaching. It's taking the form of a guided reflection, and it's for leaders at all levels. I'm Helen, a leadership coach, and I'm going to take you through some coaching style questions which you can answer at your own pace. And the idea of this is that you really get yourself ready for your return to work so that you can emerge as a wiser and stronger leader and feel really geared up for the challenges ahead. So begin by settling yourself in. I would really recommend that you have a pen and paper to hand or a journal, because if you can jot things down, it'll really help you to get the max out of it, but that's entirely up to you. And so obviously it's going to be really good if you're in a time slot where you're not going to be disturbed and you've got some real quality reflection time for yourself. That would be really good. So start by taking some nice deep breaths and relaxing into the space, sitting nice and comfortably and just feeling really ready for some good reflection. I just want to say that as you're going through this, there may be some questions that resonate with you more than others, so feel free to pause the video whenever you feel you need to have a little bit of extra time. So there's going to be 3 parts to this session. In the first part, we're going to reflect back on that period just before you had your break. Then in the second part, we're going to look forward to the next few weeks in your team or your organisation. And we'll end by focusing on your well-being and thinking about how you can best prepare yourself so that you have good work-life balance in the coming period. So just to start by reflecting back then, cast your mind back to that time before you had your break. And I know that that was a really tough and stressful time for many leaders. And so it might feel a little bit difficult looking back on that. But bear with me, it will be helpful if you can do that. So just first of all, cast your mind back and see how that feels. What do you notice coming up for you as you look back? Are you noticing that you've maybe got some negative emotions coming to the surface there? Maybe you have some regrets about things that happened and maybe things that you feel you didn't do so well. So just take stock of some of those situations or one of those situations and just choose one in particular that particularly resonates. And take yourself back into that situation and remind yourself what happened. And the first thing to do here is to take a bit of time to forgive yourself for the way that you handled that situation. And to remind yourself that you did the best that you could with the capacity that you had on that day. So looking back on that situation, but doing that in a way that's kind to yourself. And as you look back on that situation, maybe just thinking about if there was one thing that you could have done differently, what would that thing have been? And maybe take that as a learning point moving forwards. So that's something that if you're in a situation similar to that again, that's something that you could really tangibly do differently. So now let's look at the positives, because looking back on that time before you break, I'd like you to think of some situations where you did really well. Moments where you really shone as a leader. Something that you feel really proud of. So just let those situations come back to you for a moment. Take yourself back into one of those situations in particular. And just ask yourself, what was it that you liked about what you did in that situation? And kind of hold on to that and think again that this is something that you can do again and again in the future when you're in similar situations. Remind yourself that you feel proud of yourself for doing that. And also, these two situations that we've looked at here, they can be really good pointers as to what your core values are as a leader. So look back at both of them for a minute. The one where you felt that you hadn't done so well. What does that tell you about what you really value in your work life and as a leader, and maybe in life in general? And then you can do the same thing with the situation that you felt proud of, the way that you handled. And ask yourself, what does that situation, the fact that you felt proud of that, what does that tell you about what you really value as a leader and in life? So I hope that you've picked up some really useful and valuable learning points and also information about your values that you can use moving forwards. So in this next section, we're going to look forward and we're going to look into the next few weeks in your work as a leader, in your team or your organisation, and really think through what that's going to need from you, what that's going to require. So if you just begin by thinking of what your main priority is going to be in the next few weeks as a leader. Now, as you think about that, lots of things might come into your head. I know what that's like. You can sometimes be overwhelmed by so many priorities. So if that's the case for you, maybe pause this video because you really need to sift through all of that and come up with the one that is your most important priority over the next few weeks. So have a little think about that. Consider how that priority is likely to play out. What events are going to happen? What is it going to require from you as the leader? And what skills are you going to need to draw on to make this priority happen in the way that you want it to? And maybe, we'll come back to this in a moment, but maybe think briefly about what support you're going to need to enlist from other people to make this happen. So once you've kind of decided, you've identified your main priority, now you need to ask yourself a really important question, which is, if that is your main priority, what things are you going to need to say no to and drop or postpone if that's going to take the real, front seat, if that's going to be the top priority? Some things are going to have to go. So now have a little think about that. Think about what things you might have been doing, but actually on reflection, you think, no, I'm going to have to say no to that. If I want this main priority to really happen, Those things have got to go. So have a little think about that for a moment. And now let's think then about the other people in your team, in your organisation, and how your relationships with them are going to support your work in the next few weeks, and how you're going to support their work. So just have a little think at the moment about your team, about your colleagues or your the people that you manage, line manage, whatever. Have a little think about those relationships. Maybe think about how you ended before you went on your break and how those relationships were. And think about how you need to show up as a leader in these next few weeks in order to get the best from your team, give them what they need, and get what you need as well. So let's just unpick that a little bit with some more detailed questions. I just said, how are you going to show up? And that means, what leadership behaviours, what leadership style are you going to bring in and really use that to help you to be the leader that you really want to be for those people that you work with? How are you going to lead? Let's think of that first of all in terms of that little question I asked you a moment ago, which is, in terms of your main priority, what support do you need to enlist from other people? So thinking about that for a moment, the support that you need from others in order to make your priority happen. So what do you need to do as a leader to get that support? You might need to persuade some people that something different needs to happen. Or you might need to persuade yourself that this is something that you need to ask for help on. So have a think about that. What is it? What is it for you? And then you can think about the no's, the things that you just decided that you were going to say no to, things that you might delay, postpone, actually drop. So in that list of things, are there some things there that actually you could just pass on to somebody else? You don't need to drop them or postpone them. Can you actually ask somebody else to do them? So just have a little think in your mind now about how that might play out, and what would that require from you as a leader, and what would that require from them? And then just finally, just thinking generally about those relationships and about this idea of how you show up as a leader, just crystallizing for yourself one or two things that you really want to demonstrate when you go back to work. How do you want to be? What kind of leader do you want to show yourself as? So in this final section, we're going to look at your well-being and how you can safeguard it over the coming weeks. So I'd like you to think back over this holiday period, this break, and think about what have been the highlights for you. Really good moments, really lovely moments. Take yourself back into one or two of those moments. And maybe find a moment that really gave you energy, really energized you and sort of buoyed you up. And then think about a moment that really made you feel calm. So, using that information, again, you can find here some really useful information about your values, the things that are most important to you. So make a little mental note of that. But also, I want you to look ahead now into the coming weeks, and it's thinking about, are there some activities, events that you can incorporate into the days, evenings and weekends of the next few weeks that will bring you some of those positive benefits? So just cast your mind, think about, what are those events for you? And I just want to spend a moment thinking about the stress cycle, because as leaders, you're under a lot of stress. And one of the things that we know from research, and I talk a lot about a book called Burnout by the Nagoski sisters, which is really great read for this. But they talk about completing the stress cycle. So when we have a stressful day, it's so important that we allow our bodies to really come down from that stressful event and then move on. And so things like exercise, meditation, having a nice long bath, there's some examples of things that are good for this, but you need to find your own personal way. But what you've got to do is to do something that lets your body know that it's now time to relax. You can't just kind of go from one to the other. You've got to have a period of downtime that brings you to that point where the stress cycle is complete. So have a little think for yourself about what are those things and how can you build those into your evenings, your weekends, so that you really make sure that you're giving your body recovery time from stressful events. And so also maybe going back to that question I asked just there about being energized, where are the energy givers in your life? What are the things that you do that bring you more energy, that when you've done them, you come out of it and you feel, energized? So what are those for you? What things do you do that give you energy? And finally here, where do you get your opportunities for reflection and thinking? It's so important as leaders that you've got some time slots for that, and that you've got really dedicated time when it can happen. And that's different for everybody. Some people need to build slots into their day for that. Other people prefer to have a slot in the evening at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day. It's entirely up to you, but where is that for you? Because it's got to happen somewhere. You need some time to reflect and just think about the things that have happened in your leadership work. So just have a think for a moment about where that happens for you. So I hope that that's been useful to you. I hope that the reflection has really helped you to emerge from your holiday feeling energized and feeling that you're wiser and stronger as a leader and you're ready to take on the challenges ahead. I want to wish you the very best of luck with your leadership. If you've found that doing this reflection has maybe unravelled a few things and you'd really welcome more help with that, then please do get in touch with me. You can message me on social media, or you can follow the link on my website, mrstcoaching.com, to book a complimentary consultation chat, and we can talk about how coaching might help. If you found it useful, great. If you know somebody else who might find this reflection helpful, then please do share it with them, because I'd love this to get to the people who really need it the most. So best of luck, and thank you for listening.